Does the Nikon Zf have an electronic-only shutter just like the Nikon Z8? And what about IBIS? Did Nikon include it in the Zf? Stick around after this short break for all the latest leaked specifications. But first, please do me a favor. Follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, but most importantly, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, it really helps this channel grow, and it helps keep you up to date on the latest camera gear, news, and rumors. Let's get right to the latest leaked specifications for the Nikon Zf, the new full-frame mirrorless camera that's supposed to be released very, very soon. It could be in the next coming weeks or in the last 2 weeks of September. Now, in terms of IBIS, it does have IBIS. There's no specifications as to how good it is, whether it's the same as one that's in the Nikon Z8, whether it's 5-axis IBIS or anything like that, how many stops. But it's good to know that this $2,000 camera does have IBIS. But now to the shutter. First of all, the shutter speed, 1/8,000th of a second. But does it have the exact same type of shutter as the Nikon Z8 or the Nikon Z9, an electronic-only shutter? And according to Nikon rumors, that appears to be the case. We have 3 shutter options: manual, electronic, and auto. Unlike older DSLRs, there's no option for a mechanical shutter or even an option for electronic front curtain shutter. We have manual, electronic, and auto. So is this good news for you? Definitely IBIS. Having IBIS in your camera, I think, well, it's a benefit to everybody, as long as you can turn it off when you need to, aka Canon EOS R5, and as long as you don't have any IBIS wobbles, aka Canon EOS R5. But now that we got those little jabs out of the way, let's go back to the IBIS wobble for a little bit. I really do love an electronic and mechanical shutter. I like having those options, especially on the Canon EOS R5, because if we shoot less than 35 millimeters, the video footage literally shakes. As you can see here, this camera is stabilized right now, but because we're moving, because of that IBIS wobble, the footage just absolutely looks terrible. And we've had this issue since the R5 first came out. It's really, really annoying. And I'm glad to see that we don't have this issue with the Nikon Z8, the Nikon Z9, and I certainly hope it's not present with the Nikon Zf as well. So an electronic-only camera, and I think one of the reasons we're getting that is because of the sensor, the 24.4 megapixel full-frame backside illuminated sensor. Now, the rumors did get some things wrong. Going back a couple of weeks ago, Sony Alpha Rumors said that this camera was going to have a stacked sensor, and we all got excited, and Nikon Rumors said, nope, it's not going to have a stacked sensor. I don't think that not having a stacked sensor is really a letdown here, not having the exact same sensor as the Nikon Z8. Because if we look at what's behind the terminology, the difference between a backside illuminated sensor and a stacked sensor, well, the differences are rather significant. You see, a backside illuminated sensor, what it does is it changes the architecture of the chip. Instead of the light having to pass through several layers to get to the photo site, well, that's kind of flipped on its head, so it has to travel less room. It allows more light to come in, which means better low light performance, and of course, better dynamic range. And I know all the latest cameras have stacked sensors, they're all the rage, right? But the reason for that is it takes that backside illuminated capability, it keeps that, builds upon that, and it makes it so much faster. It adds memory to it, so that way you're able to take and process a whole lot more information a whole lot quicker. So for cameras like the Nikon Z8, the Nikon Z9 that can do 8K video, 20 frames per second lossless RAW, you really do want that faster speed. You want that stacked sensor. It helps reduce rolling shutter and improves the performance of each frame. But as this camera has a 24.4 sensor, but as this camera has a 24.4 megapixel full frame sensor, there's really no need to necessarily go stacked. It doesn't have 8K video, it'll probably have 6K over sample 4K and be able to shoot somewhere around 10 to 20 frames per second. So 24.4 megapixel sensor with a backside illuminated sensor, that is a big deal. For $19.99 with all the capabilities that this camera has, I think that's pretty impressive. I'm pretty excited by this camera, and I know we lost some people once we found out, yep, it's definitely not having a stacked sensor, I'm not buying it. I don't understand that, because if you understand the technology behind what backside illuminated is, this is a big deal. To have this backside illuminated technology inside the Nikon Zf, this retro styled looking cool camera, I think is a big deal. In fact, if the Canon EOS R5 Mark II just had a BSI sensor instead of a stacked sensor, I'd be pretty happy, but all the rumors are pointing to a 60 megapixel sensor in that camera, and if that's the case, I'd be surprised if Canon doesn't go stacked, because you're going to want more than just low light performance and dynamic range. With all that data, being able to shoot 20 plus frames per second, you are going to need a stacked sensor to be able to move all that information off the sensor through the image processor and directly to the storage. So $1,999 for a 24.4 megapixel backside illuminated sensor, IBIS. It's looking like a pretty impressive camera. We don't know all the specifications behind the video. Yes, we know it can do 4K up to 60 frames per second, but is that 6K oversample 4K? We don't know. What type of codecs are provided with this camera? Again, we don't know. I'm really looking forward to this. We're really looking forward to this. So here we are, a couple of weeks of leaks now. It's now August the 12th or August the 13th. I don't know what day it is. I just spent a couple of days in Niagara Falls, enjoying the falls, and I really got some great shots up close to the falls on both the US side and the Canadian side. And I gotta tell you, I had a lot of fun there, although I had trouble sleeping. I don't know what it is when I don't know what it is about being in Niagara Falls, but whenever I'm staying in a hotel in Niagara Falls, I just can't sleep for some reason. But at least I came away with some really good footage. So $1,999, due to be announced really soon. I did make a mistake earlier in this video. I said around 10 to 20 frames or something frames per second. The Nikon Zf, according to Nikon Rumors, in the latest set of rumored specifications, says that this camera can do 30 frames per second. Now that is JPEG and HEIF. And I love shooting HEIF. If you've got the option for JPEG and HEIF and you're not running a Mac, definitely go with HEIF. You're gonna find that things are gonna look a whole lot better, especially if you're shooting in the forest. You've got some light shining through from the blue sky. What you'll notice, if you shoot JPEG, that light will come across as white, whereas HEIF, it comes across as blue. So you get so much more color information, more detail. I recommend HEIF. But with RAW, I'm curious to know what we'll get with RAW. 10, 12, 14, 20 frames per second? We'll just have to wait and see. And of course, the storage, it's supposed to have dual SD card slots, one of them being a regular SD card and the other being a micro SD card slot. I'm really curious to see how that firms up. It sounds a little strange to have that combination. That doesn't mean it can't work. There's nothing wrong with micro card slots. I'm just surprised in a camera that's 700 grams that's able to have all this space that they can't do dual SD card slots, V30, like everybody else. So really interesting there. And oh, one other last thing. It is going to have Nikon's version of pixel shift. I don't know what they're going to call it. Canon doesn't call it pixel shift. They call it some sort of high resolution special mode. Really long-winded, and I think it can do like 200 megapixels or something. 400 megapixels. It's quite detailed. So we'll see how good it is on the Nikon. Hopefully it does take into account moving subjects, but from what I've seen, the Sony a7R5 has the best implementation of pixel shift because it's able to take into account moving subjects, remove them without creating any motion blur. And despite everybody else out there that having really good pixel shift, none of them can hold up as well as a Sony a7R5. And if you're interested in pre-ordering the Nikon Zf, while it isn't available for pre-order right now, I do have smart pre-order links down below, and those links will be available for the Nikon Zf as soon as the embargo is lifted. And the reason why you might want to use these links, bookmark them, is because as soon as we have the announcement, we're going to have multiple kit packages, multiple SKUs. We're going to have the body alone. We're going to have the body with multiple kit lenses available. Plus, if you're buying from B&H or Adorama, guess what they do? They like to add their own special packages where they throw in a memory card. They throw in this case, it might throw in 2 memory cards, camera bag, cleaning lens cloth, and all that. And if you need that sort of stuff, these packages are really great because it saves you a lot of money. So go ahead and bookmark these Adorama links, these smart links to the Nikon Zf at Adorama and B&H. And a bit of a disclaimer, I do get anywhere from 6 to 12% back from a purchase or a pre-order, and that goes to help supporting this channel so I can get the latest and greatest. So please go ahead and subscribe and choose all notifications. And also, if you want to stay up to date on all the latest news and rumors, whether it be minor, pricing information, any sort of that stuff, all that stuff that's not big enough to have its own separate video, then go ahead and follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter. I'm starting to say X now. Although, I think they're going to run into some problems because they do a lot of videos on X, and if they can't really say X videos because that's, how should we say, a site for adults. So that's rather interesting. I think X can get them into trouble. I do like the X. It's kind of like Z. It's one of those letters of the alphabet that has some force behind it. So anyhow, my point is, if you want to stay up to date on the minor news and rumors, all those stories that aren't quite big enough to have their own separate video, follow me on Twitter. I'm always tweeting out information, including pricing information. And whenever I announce videos like this one here, those also get tweeted out. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon.